Hi everybody, it's Librarian Faith from the Mandel Public Library of West Palm Beach. And today, I'm going to show you how to make a festive holiday wreath. Let's get started, shall we? You'll need a couple of things in order to do this project. Firstly, you'll need your styrofoam base. Now, I've already covered this one in our holiday wreath, but what it basically is some white styrofoam with an 11-inch diameter. I purchased this at a certain tree that sells everything for $1, so it's quite affordable. You'll also need yarn in a couple of different complementary colors. I used these to make our pom-poms, and I also used a red and green kind of homespun feeling wool acrylic in order to cover the base. Now, you can use whatever colors you want for whatever holiday you're celebrating. Just make sure you use about 3 or 4 different colors. If you just use 1 or 2, it gets a little bit visually boring. You'll also need some pretty ribbon in order to put up top, something relatively circular in shape in order to form the pom-poms, a pair of scissors, and a hot glue gun with lots of hot glue. In order to do this project, you're going to need a lot of yarn pom-poms. I already showed you how to make yarn pom-poms in my Mickey Ears tutorial, but that was a while ago, so I'm going to do it again as a refresher. You're going to want to take some sort of object, roughly cylindrical, and use this as your base to wrap your yarn around. Now you can also just use your hands, but eventually they'll get very stiff and cut off circulation. Then you want to start wrapping the yarn around it. Depending on how big you want your pom-pom to be, you'll need to wrap it roughly 60 to 120 times. I want this one to be on the smaller side, so I'm just going to wrap it around about 70 times. Okie dokie, we'll call that good. You'll take your scissors, snip it off, set it down for just a second, cut another piece of string, not very long at all, and lay it down on the table. Peel off your wrapped up yarn off of whatever object you were using. Lay it the middle of that newly bound yarn on the piece of string we just cut, and then tie it in a very, very tight knot, right in the middle. This is what will keep all of our dozens and dozens of little pieces of yarn together once we start cutting them apart. So you want it to be extra tight, otherwise it can just kind of disintegrate. And I usually knot it 3 or 4 times just to be safe. And you'll end up with something that looks like this, a very cute little bow. Now, in order to make it a pom-pom, you're going to take your scissors again and start cutting all the little loopies in half. Just going all the way across. Okie dokie. We have that done. Now we're going to trim our pom-pom, because right now it's not looking very cute. We'll just want to fluff it up and start chopping along the edges. There we go, a cute little pom-pom. Now it's very easy to just keep cutting away at these things. At some point you need to say, this is good enough. So, this is good enough. You'll want to repeat that a couple of times, depending on how many you want on your final wreath. Once you're happy with the number of pom-poms you have, then you can move on to the next step, which is wrapping your foam base. Since we're using yarn pom-poms as our decorations, you'll also want your base to be roughly yarn inspired. I'm using this very thick knit, woolly kind of material. It's very soft and pretty. You don't want to use something that's very visually different from the yarn, otherwise it'll look a bit odd. I initially did this project with some ribbon, like you would your typical wreath, and they just did not match at all. The colors were off, the textures looked wrong together, it was very visually jarring. So I went with this yarn, and it looks much better. Once your hot glue gun has warmed up, you'll go ahead and take it and put a little bit on whatever you want the back side of your wreath to be. Doesn't really matter at this point, it's all the same. Tap it off and lay down your yarn. Just the end of it. And hold it in place for a second or 2. Just to give it time to bond. Then we're going to start wrapping this all the way around the outside of the wreath. Laying down a little bit extra hot glue occasionally, just to make sure it has some structural integrity. Now as you can see, I've run out of yarn before I was able to make it all the way around the wreath. That is a-okay though, because we needed a spot to put our yarn pom-poms anyways. We'll just use the rest of this little red yarn to cover this part to make sure that no white shows, and then we'll stick our yarn pom-poms right here. Let's finish it up. And there we go, we've covered up the white spots. And that's all we wanted to do with this extra little bit of red yarn. We don't want any white peeping through once we put our pom-poms in the middle. So you're gonna wanna have it front side up. And we're gonna take our, let's see, 6, 9, 11 yarn pom-poms and varying colors. Now you can use whatever colors you like for this project. If you want to do a very pretty Hanukkah style wreath, you could do white as the base and then a bunch of blue and silver pom-poms. If you want to do a Kwanzaa one, maybe you could cover the base in red and have some green and black pom-poms. Do whatever you want. It can be very beautiful any way you want to do it. But for this one, I'm using mostly light green, dark green, and red. So we're going to take our pom-poms, and I've specifically got these a little bit smaller. Bigger pom-poms just don't really work with this dimension. I believe this is an 11-inch wreath base. They look a little odd, so I've got them down a little bit more. And we will just start arranging them around the bottom to see how we want it to look. We want to make sure we cover up that extra red yarn we put in at the bottom so that it doesn't shine through. That looks about good. So once you're happy with how they're arranged, then you can start hot gluing them in place. I'm going to peel these front ones back, keeping them in roughly the same position, and start hot gluing these ones at the top. You will need a fair amount of hot glue for this part, so make sure you have extra sticks available. And then we'll just put it on there and hold it in place for a couple of seconds. We want to hold it in place for a little bit just to make sure the glue has time to dry. All of the yarn we're using is acrylic. Everything in this project's acrylic, and that can take a little bit longer to cool. It likes to hold heat because it's all plastic, basically. You can use wool yarn for this project. It would turn out lovely. It's just significantly more expensive. These yarn skeins I was able to purchase for about $3 for each one, and I used probably 1 skein total in making these. Since I used different colors, I had to purchase 3 different skeins. The styrofoam base I purchased from a certain unnamed store that sells everything for $1. So that was also $1. And this chunkier wool is a little bit more expensive, but I think it was about $5. So this is a fairly inexpensive craft, but using natural fibers like wool would significantly increase that cost. But if that's important to you and you think that'll make your holidays a little bit more jolly, go for it. Okay, got those 2 in place. Got this green one off to the side over here. Now sometimes these pom-poms will have a natural spot that's a little bit more flat. Try to put your hot glue there. It'll make it stick a little bit better. Be careful with your hot glue gun with this yarn as well. Since it is, again, acrylic, the hot glue gun tip will also melt the yarn, and it can make them hard and a little bit discolored where the tip hits. Now most of the time the tip will only be touching the back of the pom-pom where nobody will ever see it, but you want to still be careful with it just in case. Although please always be careful with the hot glue gun. Getting hot glue gun burns is not fun. And there we have it. We have them along the bottom. Now you can hang it either straight up and down like this, or how I'm going to do it, a little bit off to the side. I think it looks a little bit more festive that way. You can also add some letters along the side, maybe your family's last name or the word Mary is one of the ones I wanted to do, or anything else you'd like. You can also just go ahead and go all the way around this wreath with the little cotton pom-poms. You will have to cut out a lot of pom-poms if that's what you want to do though, I will warn you. We use 9 pom-poms just for this little one, so you probably need about 50 pom-poms total, and that'll take a while and your hand will cramp up. But it does turn out very adorable. So let's go ahead and add that final touch of the little ribbon up top. Now you don't necessarily have to do this step depending on how you intend to hang your wreath. But I'm going to add this just to make it a little bit easier to hang up around the office. So you're going to take whatever kind of fancy ribbon you'd like. I enjoy these bright sparkly snowflakes. You're going to measure out enough ribbon to go all the way around, and then about 8 or 10 inches. We're just going to basically make one big loop. Yeah, we'll say that's good. Then you'll cut the ribbon off. And once again, you'll use some hot glue to secure it in place. Now, also, this is acrylic. Be careful of your fingers. It will not protect you from the heat of the hot glue. Try not to touch it directly. We'll do the other side that same way. If you'd like, you can also tie it in a lovely little bow up top, but I have never been good at that step, so that's why I'm doing it this way. Going to roll it back up so that hot glue part is in the back. Going to add a dab of hot glue so that it connects right where we want the wreath to hang. I want this off to the side, but that means it's not evenly distributing the weight. So adding a dot of hot glue right here to attach the wreath directly to the ribbon can help make sure that you keep the heavier part of the wreath where you want it to be. I could hang it up and down, but I just don't think it looks as cute as having it like this. I mentioned how hot glue is because despite working with it for 2 decades, basically at this point, I still manage to burn myself almost every time I use it. And here's our final result. Isn't it festive and fun? Now this is a great project to do, and it's relatively cheap as well. However, it will take a fair amount of time. These pom-poms alone probably took me about 4 hours to make, and it will make your hand a bit sore using the scissors so much. So if you do want to do this, make sure you schedule an afternoon in order to finish it. But it is a great, easy, and fun way to make your house a little bit more festive for this holiday time of year. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Be sure to tune in again this month for another one. And until then, happy reading!